Welcome back. Northwestern University becomes the latest major academic institution to cut a deal with the Trump administration to unlock hundreds of millions in grant funding. In exchange, the school will agree to pay $75 million and combat anti-Semitism on campus, prevent so-called DEI-driven admissions and hiring policies, and a ban on gender transitioning care for youth under the age of 18. But did the school capitulate? Joining us tonight is political science professor Jacqueline Stevens, who is the NU chapter president of the American Association of University Professors. Professor Stevens, thank you for speaking with us tonight. We mentioned the terms of this deal. Is this a fair deal, or is this a capitulation to a so-called bully?
Well, and there's 2 points. First, we actually don't know the exact terms of the agreement. You mentioned that there's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars restored. However, the grants are actually tied to references to appendices A and B, and those are not provided in the attachments to the agreement. And when I requested those appendices, I received a response on Sunday saying that the list of impacted grants were not included in the original agreement, and that as soon as the government concludes their review of the grants and posts them, we will make them available on our website. And so, I'm very concerned that President Biden signed something without having final government sign off on exactly what it is that the consideration will be in exchange for the $75 million.
So you're saying there's nothing...
In addition to the concerns about the capitulation, there's actually a really substantive question as to what exactly Northwestern's supposed to be obtaining in exchange for that $75 million.
So there's nothing in writing saying they're going to get all that grant money, whether it be for cancer research or some other kind of research or what have you, that hasn't been spelled out. That seems to be fairly daunting then, since Northwestern has agreed to do these things and spend $75 million. I mean, does that sound like a ransom payment? That grant money was supposed to come to the university regardless.
Correct. And people use the word ransom or extortion. There's no really logical, practical reason why that money should be going to the Trump administration and not staying with Northwestern to support education and research.
And in terms of some of the other things here, they want to, there are some pro-Israel students who are celebrating this, especially getting rid of anti-Semitism. And then what's been called the Meadow agreement that gave some concessions to Muslim students. First of all, quickly remind us the Deering agreement and the consequences of getting rid of this.
Right. So the Meadow agreement was something that was worked out between then President Michael Schill and some other administrators and students who were representing people who had set up an encampment on the Northwestern campus protesting at the ethnocracy of Israel and also the mass killings on the part of the Israeli government. And in exchange, and so originally Schill billed the agreement and the policies to end the encampment as recognition of the importance of the students' ability to protest and to recognize their concerns as legitimate. It turns out that the only reason that he did this was because the mayor of Evanston refused Schill's repeated requests for mass arrests. We found that out later. And the Meadow agreement provided a number of things, including some support for foreign students, scholars from Palestine, a Middle East, North Africa / Muslim house, and the reinitiation of an oversight committee for Northwestern's investments. And it's really, there's so much doublespeak. There's just like a kind of cacophony of nonsense that is coming out of the administration right now as to what exactly they've committed to in this agreement. And there are just a lot of contradictions between what they've stated in writing and what they're saying on the website. So it's not really clear exactly what's going to happen, just like they violated the commitment to the Meadow agreement by saying that they terminated it with no consultation with the faculty or students, it's not clear what exactly they're going to be upholding when they're responding to this particular resolution.
And I should mention that I did reach out to the president's office, President Beenan at Northwestern, and did not hear back. The alternative here, regardless of whether we think, these are unfair policies, no one was consulted, the alternative of losing hundreds of millions of grant funding, assuming that that's going to be restored, which you said we don't know, could that have been worse than simply striking this agreement and saying, look, let's get this money back?
It didn't have to unfold this way. So I grant your point, which is a very important one, that Northwestern had been deprived of $790 million that had already been designated for our colleagues' research projects, and that money is very important to them. The Faculty Assembly in April of 2025 passed a series of resolutions encouraging Northwestern to resist unconstitutional and unlawful demands of the Trump administration. The Faculty Assembly in October of 2025 voted 595 to 4 against, quote, any capitulation on the part of Northwestern University to demands that undermine our rights and constitutional and democratic principles and so forth. Northwestern could have done what Harvard did and sue the Trump administration in the spring, as Harvard did. Harvard sued in the summer. And at the Faculty Assembly meeting in October, when Beenan said, if we don't go along with this, litigation is going to be expensive and it's going to take a long time, it was pointed out to him that Harvard, at the day of that meeting, had announced that it had received over 80% of its funding restored as a result of the litigation. So,
yeah.
Right, so he knew that was something that could be obtained if Northwestern, in an earlier time frame, had gone to court. And I think the real question is why Northwestern didn't exercise our legal rights, our institutional rights, and sue the Trump administration much earlier, instead of waiting and drawing this out and ending up with a deal that turns over Northwestern's policies to federal law enforcement and that doesn't give us any direct information about what exactly is going to be obtained. And one final point about the agreement. If the government doesn't go along with its side, the agreement itself restricts Northwestern from going to court to enforce it for over 2 months. So without the agreement, Northwestern could have gone to court tomorrow.
Right.
And with the agreement, we still don't have any certainty about what the funding is, and they've tied their own hands as far as suing if there's a problem.
All right. Well, Professor Jacqueline Stevens, thanks so much for your views. And again, we invite President Henry Beenan to come here and explain this agreement to us. Thank you again for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And after the break, we hear from the wife of a legal asylum seeker who was detained by federal immigration officials.